Stories stir the soul.
Stories reveal.
And stories heal.
In this podcast, we will give you an inside look at someone who's had a life-changing breakthrough.
Real people, real stories with real breakthroughs. As a health and wellness expert and coach, and Todd as a men's mentor,
we've seen firsthand what God can do when it comes to a breakthrough. So lean in, listen well. This could be your biggest breakthrough.
hello and welcome to this episode of Your Biggest Breakthrough. I'm your host, Wendy Pett.
I'm Todd Isberner, your co-host.
Yes, we always say co-host, host.
Or you're my
yes.
co-host.
We're just a together host.
We are together hosts, yeah.
And we're so excited about this episode. Last episode, episode 67, we talked about the stuck points that prevent the breakthrough you crave. And so this whole month, this whole next series is about how to get unstuck. And so we have a 30-day Get Unstuck challenge.
Yeah, you're being challenged.
Yeah, you're being challenged.
We're
being challenged.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about one of the stuck points today. In our episode last week, we mentioned all three stuck points, and I'm just going to keep you hanging because you got to go listen to it to see, do I fit in that stuck point? In fact, somebody just emailed me today after receiving information about this and said, so all these good things are going in my life. What am I stuck on? Because they haven't listened to the podcast yet. They will find out. Today, we are going to address the stuck point of on-demand work life. Yep.
Ouch.
Yep. You work too much. That's the truth. And you don't have to work that much.
But I love what I do.
You got to get things balanced out.
But I love what I do.
I know you do. And we're going to have all of these excuses addressed by our special guest, Al Hammond, who is just he's the consummate professional in every respect towards that word. This guy gets stuff done. First time I heard Al speak, it's like, wow, I want to be like Al. Not just because he gets so much stuff done, but because of the way he has managed to set up disciplines and boundaries and work ethics in his life that allow him to still stay sane.
Yeah, and he's helped train people how to respond to him or whatever I'm trying to say.
I don't know it, but I'm going to read his, maybe it'll spark something. I'm just going to go through his bio. First of all, Al is president of Hammond Homes. In fact, he's one of the founders. He's also Agents of And you're going to find out more about what in the world is Agents of And. Mm-hmm. It's really high-performance coaching, and he's a consultant. He's developed the 4Q, or the four-quarter operating system, which is an awesome system, and it's not complicated. He's also the host of the Driven Few podcast, and after decades of the grind, can we all relate to the grind just a tad?
Yes.
Decades of the grind, Al realized that his legacy resided in learning, experiences, and memories with his family, not the amount of zeros in his bank account.
Oh, amen, amen.
So that, coupled with cortisol issues and phase 2 adrenal fatigue, that was the hard stop for Al. He developed what is known as the 4Q operating system, which is needed in order to live in the and. First time I read that, I was like, what is the and? We're going to find that out. He developed, so then for Al, that meant leading his business to the extent that he wanted and needed to, and catch us now, and be the best father he can be, and be the best husband that he could be, and be the best man of God he could be.
Yes.
So Al, come on in, man. Can't wait to get into this whole area with you.
Welcome.
My friends.
Welcome to the podcast. We are so thrilled that you're here and that you would take the time, because we know you're very, structured with your time. So we are appreciative that you inserted us in.
Yeah. In fact,
absolutely.
Al practiced this stuff so sincerely that we had scheduled the podcast, I think, a couple of times, and it had to be postponed because of the and in his family priorities.
Yeah.
Al, just mention that, in fact, because what was that first one? I think you had something that something came up with your daughter, and you needed to give attention to it.
Well, firstly, before I get into that, I want to receive that honor that you guys gave me. I very much appreciate that. And I also want to give you guys a little honor. You mentioned coming on here in your intro that your last episode was episode 67, which makes this, if I'm good at math, episode 68. And I got to tell you, I think the industry standard is most podcasts essentially die or phase off after episode 7. So don't quote me on where I heard that. So you guys are exponentially greater than that, and honor and respect to you for providing the value. Yeah, absolutely, you should be, as you should be.
Thank you.
To get back to your question, Todd, we had a situation where my daughter does competitive dance. She's 12. And this is just a deal that, and you'll probably hear me say this quite a bit, regardless of situation or circumstance, that's just not something that I compromise on because I want to be able to be there. So on one hand, I had committed, right? So there's my word. I had committed to you for both of you guys to be able to be a part of this podcast. And then we needed to make an adjustment, not an excuse, an adjustment to be able to live in the end so I could go and be a part of my daughter's event that weekend and be able to still do this at a later point in time. So I appreciate you guys allowing me and affording me the opportunity to do both.
Of course.
It taught us a lesson. It really did. It reinforced again just how it is possible to make those kinds of adjustments, even though you might feel a little bad about having to move things around. The reality is first things first, and that's what you paid attention to.
Priorities. Yeah. And you have always been a driven individual, at least from what we know of you. But there came a time where you kind of hit the wall because you were saying yes to everything, and you literally have a story there. And I want to unpack that just a little bit to kind of paint the picture for everybody.
Sure. Yes, ma'am. So by trade, I grew up as a second generation luxury construction home builder based out of the Midwest. And my father, by the grace of God, started this organization in 1978. So now I'll fast forward a little bit. About 12 years ago, here I was with an opportunity to kind of take over the helm of the organization. Now you hear those stories where here's Junior. Is he going to do great and scale the organization, or is he going to not so great and do something else? And I was heaven bent, so to speak, on making sure I didn't fall into the latter. So I really did whatever I could at all costs to be able to be the builder, be the real estate broker, some areas of the design, which is I really had no business doing. And it really boiled down to I didn't want to let my father down, because here's my father coming from a third world country, starting bootstrapping his way up from an organization that really was nothing up into a multi-million-dollar organization. Here I am, college educated with 3 degrees, 2 of them at the graduate level by the grace of God. And now I have this fickle expectation, at least in my mind, well, if this is what my dad was able to do with these tools, this is what you should be able to do with this. So I went to work. And it was about 5 to 7 years where, candidly speaking, guys, I fielded every phone call, every text message, every email, and I'd be sitting here looking at you, lying to you, if I didn't stop happy birthday during a birthday party to be able to field a phone call. And in my mind, my intent and my logic was not all about the almighty dollar, so to speak, but it was I wanted my clients to understand that I cared about them and that I pedestaled them. But it wasn't until later on that I realized that I was doing that very much in the or at the cost of my family life, the cost of my relationship with my wife, the cost of my relationship with God, to be able to say, all right, well, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and this. And then if I have anything left over, or if I have any time left over, I'll find some time for this. And you guys know as well as I do, being high performance individuals yourself, there's never any time left over. You know, everybody has the same amount of time. It's just what do we choose to prioritize with that time relative to our systems? Right. So that put me in a situation where, even candidly speaking, Todd, Wendy, guys, I'd like to sit here and tell you, hey, once I had that reckoning, so to speak, or that realization that was sufficient enough for me to wake up. And unfortunately, it wasn't. There was a time, it was about Christmas, probably 2018, 2019, where I just felt like immense overwhelm. And it wasn't like anything was going awry or anything was less than favorable in my life. On the contrary, everything was great or good, so to speak. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. And that's finally when I went to a physician, I learned about phase 2 adrenal fatigue and cortisol issues. And I was told, even then, I remember the conversation clear as day, this physician, and I'm good friends with her now, she basically looked me in my eyes through my soul and was like, you can't will yourself through this. And dumb me was like, watch me. And it wasn't, it wasn't but 6 months later when I was back in their office and I was like, Uncle, I yield. What do we have to do? And then I
Were you like
learned, like,
tired but wired all the
absolutely,
time? Yeah. Yep.
100%. I don't need
Mm-hmm.
6 hours of sleep. I'll need 4 hours of sleep. I mean,
Right.
it's a deal where, again, I didn't want to let my dad down. I come from a situation where, okay, if I want to, I'll wake up an hour earlier. So 6 o'clock in the morning became 5 o'clock in the morning, became 4 o'clock in the morning. And it served me very militantly. And I got to a point where, and I still remember to this day, my day to day was I wake up at 4:03. I'm in the gym at 5:02, in the shower at 6:01, ready to be at the breakfast table at 7 o'clock, regardless of situation or circumstance, so I could take my kids to school because that was my non-negotiable at the time. I just wanted that half hour to be able to take my kids to school. And anything after that, I'm going to go hard on. I'm going to field phone calls. And if that leads me till 2 o'clock in the morning, guess what? Roger that, sack up. I'm going to be there 4:03 the next morning doing what I got to do.
Right.
And then God tapped me on the shoulder by the grace of God and said, buddy, we got some other plans for you. And that was kind of the catalyst as to how I got into understanding what my systems were and what I needed to do to kind of right my ship.
I was just going to say, in the midst of all of that, as you're going through those years, particularly those first 12 years of really kind of trying to prove to yourself that you had the stuff that it took to really build this business. And I think you probably wanted to prove to Dad too and others around you, really were convinced you could do it all. And I just stopped for a moment because so many of our listeners are in that place.
Yeah.
We sort of
have on a cape.
We fool ourselves into thinking we can do it all. But the reality is you need a stop point to recognize, wait a second, things are out of balance, and I've got stuff that's way out of whack, and I'm gonna end up paying a big price on this. But what I'm curious about, during all that time, where was God in all of this? Where was your faith at in that period of time where you're wrestling, you're struggling, and things just aren't the way they're supposed to be?
Very good question. I would say watching, waiting. So my dad will always tells me, even now to this day, so you've got your plans and God's got his. He just sits and he watches and he waits. And then in my mind, I never thought that I was getting away from God, right? I would say prayers. I would make sure that I was fasting at times and make sure that I'm going to prayers. And in my mind, that was enough because I needed to do what I needed to do to take care of things first so I could, and this is candidly speaking, how I would justify it, so I could put myself in a position to be able to have more time with God, have more time with my family, have more time with the business. And then I realized I'm not systemized to be able to do this. I'm not proactively going into this. I'm reactively trying to find time. And then the time that I do, I'm not showing up at 100% me. I'm maybe 40 or 50% me because I don't have any energy left over.
Oh,
man, rewind the tape.
Seriously, you are talking to somebody right now because people, we are wired to be present, and yet most people are not present, but they're showing up and acting as if they are, but their mind is somewhere else. They're looking at their phone, doing an email real quick. But they're not actually present in the moment, and therefore they're not able to experience life to the fullest. And so, I think as someone like yourself, that's an entrepreneur and a go-getter and wants to serve people, and maybe even a little bit of a people pleaser too. I don't know, but I think that's not a bad thing. It's just if it gets out of balance, it definitely can be. And I think of so many people that are listening that might be on that same side of the fence where they just want to do all the people-pleasing stuff and be the best and do it all, and then they find themselves exactly where you were, just tapped out, flat out, and like, what's wrong with me? Everything looks good on the outside, but man, I'm tired and wired, and what do I do? So before they end up like you, what's the first thing that you would say to that person to check to even see if they may be out of balance?
Yeah, and without having to go to the doctor to find out you got cortisol issues and adrenal issues, right?
100%. So this is something that I coach on and speak on. And the very first thing that comes to my mind is vitals. So I speak to vitals, vision, and then the vehicles to be able to get there. But one thing that I never did was a vitals assessment. I mean, so we'll take a vitals assessment in our vehicle. Most of us will say, I need an oil change. I don't really want to go get an oil change because it's going to force me to slow down. I'm going to have to do this. Or I need to change my tires or insert something here. But if we don't, eventually there's going to be issues that's going to require us more time, effort, energy, and resources to fix something that if we were proactive in that assessment, and it doesn't have to be anything that's grandiose. It doesn't have to be, oh, well, yeah, absolutely. Let's just take, and this is something that I do on the daily. How do you feel today? And I want to make sure that I preface that with, I don't make my decisions based on my feelings. I make my decisions based on my visions and the subsequent operating system relative to that vision, not on my feelings. But my feelings will tell me the level of, I don't want to say intentionality, but the level of how hard am I going to go that day? Meaning, is this a day that a whoop band, for example, that I utilize to be able to just give me my 100%, to give me metrics to be able to say, listen, you got 2 hours of sleep, you're red 3%. It's not great for you to go to the gym today. Whereas before it was negative self-talk. Okay, sissy, you're not going to go to the gym today. Everybody else is going to the gym. You're not good enough to do that. You can't keep up with them, things of that nature.
Wow. Okay, that's so good because men especially are wired that way, right?
Yeah. If you got a time you're supposed to be in the gym and this is the day, you better be there.
Don't be such a wimp. Get in there. But women tend to, listen more to their feelings. So there's definitely a balance for how men and women operate, because you don't want to stay trapped in the feelings. You need to have the facts, but men need to tap into how they really feel a little bit more, as opposed to not being called a wimp.
Ignoring that. So Alan, I love that question. How do you feel today? So how have you answered that? Well, let's say physically and emotionally, you're flat as a pancake today. You assess, okay, this is not the day to, and then fill in the blank, but it is the day to fill in the blank. Could you give us an example of that?
Absolutely. So you make an adjustment, not an excuse. So in my mind's eye, before it was, oh, you're becoming a victim, or you're making a victim statement for yourself to do that. And I don't ever wanted to do that. To your point, I don't want to let myself down. I certainly don't want to let my dad down. So how is it they're going to do that? And now the paradigm shift is it's not an excuse, rather an adjustment, meaning my wake up call still, and we can get into my personal operating system here in a bit, but my wake up call still, naturally, my circadian rhythm has been trained. I'm 4:03. That's about my time to wake up. Now, my first thing I do is give myself my first fruits in the morning. I'm thankful and I'm blessed for a litany of things, and I make sure that I speak to that. And sometimes I even write that out through a journaling exercise. But the next thing I want to do is get into my physical activity. Go to the gym. My gym opens up at 5 o'clock, so I'm typically there around 4:45. That stated, and directly answer your question, Todd, if I have a metric on my whoop band or something else that just says, you know what, this is going to be counterproductive for you today, I don't want to say I won't go to the gym, but it depends on the level. I'll go to the gym, and then maybe instead of doing a weight training, I'll do a light cardio, or I'll stretch, or yoga, or something else that's going to sew back into me as opposed to deplete me.
It's good.
And it's just having the wherewithal and the discipline to be able to say, today is a part of my vision. It's not my vision in its entirety. So if I go 100% today, what's going to happen to me tomorrow, the next day, next week, relative to my vision at the end of the year?
That's just wise. I mean, that prevents injury. It prevents, all kinds of things when you are listening to your body in that way, as athletically speaking, right?
It's hard to do because, again, you probably have a whole list of things. I don't know quite what that system is that you use, and we want to find out. But Wendy and I have our, unfortunately, this is with us all the time. And so it's constantly reminding us the tasks that we said we're going to be doing. And to make the adjustment is the part that I'm picking up from you. There are times you just have to make adjustments, not excuses. You can get things done, but you have to do it in the right priority. I do want to go just back to your story again, because we kind of left off at the doctor's office there. And so something happened where you made a decision. You call it results to relationship, and that's the way you're driven now. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because I think we can all get just so tangled up in the stuff that we're doing, we forget about the things that matter most. And how did that change for you?
Very good question. And again, I'd like to sit here and say, hey, once I recognized that, I created this grandiose plan and immediately implemented. And it wasn't. It was something that I felt like the proverbial rope of my life, the harder I was pulling on it, it didn't matter. It was continue to come through stressors, through triggers, through general life. But the issue is my cup was just continuously never full. I was always depleting on things or action items or something that I wanted to accomplish, the result, and the relationships would be the byproduct. So I learned through coaching, my own personal self-development, that listen, sowing seeds reap rewards, and the relationships reap the results. And if you sow into the relationships as hard as you're sowing into the results and learn to pedestal the process rather than the result, the byproduct will be the result. And the relationships are going to be the ones that take you there. Now, again, as I say that, guys,
That's good.
it's not easy to make that paradigm shift. And again, candidly speaking, I'm a guy, I spent 12 plus years in the bodybuilding industry. So if there's a lagging body part, well, I'm just going to do more push-ups. I'm going to wake up earlier. I'm going to eat more food. I'm going to do more cardio. This isn't do more, it's actually do less. And it's actually be able to understand that when you're doing less, and Wendy, you brought up a great point, present. And I speak to this all the time, not even present, but omnipresent. Yes. I mean, I don't want to have any kind of distractions. It's an unrealistic expectation, or is it? If you set up an operating system that affords you, I have the time to be able to do this, this, and this, and this. And then I focus wholeheartedly on that, whether that's sowing seeds into my daughters, where I'm just sitting in the audience. I'm literally watching her do her thing, or it's fishing with my son, or it's date night with my wife, or for all of us Monday morning achievers, going hard in our business to be able to move the proverbial needle. But what I found was, before I had that mindset where I was, by the grace of God, able to transition that look through a different lens or a paradigm shift, it was just, I couldn't. I mean, the more effort I tried, it was almost like I was spinning my wheels deeper and deeper and deeper. And then it was, I don't know what to do. And that can transition kind of, I guess we can just stop right there. I don't want to transition into the system yet, but it was a deal where I went looking. I was asking, seeking, knocking, figuring out what is it that I need to do? Who are the subject matter experts? Because you see these guys, social media, books, anything of that nature that are just, how does this dude get everything done? I mean, he runs 4 or 5 organizations. He's able to be in California in the morning and then at the dinner table at night with his kids and doesn't miss anything. How is that? So I started researching the guys that understood how to do it, what they were doing. And then I realized genius leaves clues. Right. This stuff isn't rocket science. Like I'm just not implementing it. Absolutely. Right? That is one of them. 100%. Yes. The Ed Milet's, the Hal Elrods of the world, yes. Atomic Habits, things of those nature, where it was, oh, that's how they do it. And then I slowly but surely started to say, okay, well, I'm already up in the morning. And I understand that these guys, they do a lot in their day, but to own their day, they own their morning. That's good. So I went through a little bit of that and I said, okay, this is great, but still I wasn't protecting anything to fill my cup. And then through trial and error, I realized, well, if I want to own my morning, I need to own my night. Mm-hmm. And that's where my entire operating system started, was protecting my sleep. And I never did that before.
That's so good, Al, because I feel like I'm on a mission right now for that sleep component to master that, because I've never really tapped into that before either. Because I used to be like, I'm a night owl, I can get stuff done, that kind of thing, and have pride in that. And now I'm like, oh man, it's 9 o'clock. I better get in bed. And I'm like, who am I? Anyway, I love it. But I got to ask you, because when you were in that space of just kind of just not where you want or desire to be and where you are now, how was it affecting your current relationships that are thriving now with your wife, your children, and beyond?
Absolutely. Also a great question. So in my mind, I justified it. Well, so my kids are 19, 12, and 8 now. So at the time, my daughter, let's see, she was 7 or 8. And my son was 3 or 4. So in my mind's eye, I said, well, I have time. I have time to be able to make the memories. I have time to be able to make it. And then the next thing you know, my son got his driver's license. Mm-hmm. Next thing you know, my son was 18. My son graduated from high school. And then it became, oh, I don't have time. And then all the issues were still there. My intentionality was great. When we think about this, think about folks at the beginning of the year. beginning of the year, we have folks that, and I'm not speaking in a negative connotation about this, their heart is to be able to have a resolution or their intention changes, but their operating system doesn't. So it's almost a week, a month, 6 months, depending on their wherewithal, depending on how many triggers they have or what their levels are. And in my mind was that all came back at me all at once was, oh, I'm still doing this, this, and this, but now I'm 3 years late. I'm 3 years in arrears. So instead of thinking, okay, I need to get this down, I went into overdrive even more. Well, I need to make up for lost time, which was even the exact opposite and counterproductive of what I wanted and should have done. Very, very good point.
Yeah.
Al, we're anxious to get into the operating system because I think that's where the hardcore practical takeaways are going to be extremely beneficial for our listeners. But before we get there, and I want folks to keep listening, I want them I want you to help us identify a couple of things. One is why don't we do this earlier in life? Why are we so driven? Why do we force ourselves to continually make excuses, keep our head in the sand, stay in denial, pretend that that isn't all that bad and I really can get it done? What drives us to not stop like you had a hard stop and begin to change things? What is that all about? Some of it might be, people pleasing, some of it might be the bank account, whatever, but why, when the consequences are so severe, why don't we stop?
Change.
Why can't we recognize it?
Another great question, guys. Awesome. I mean, and that for me, and I can only speak to me, it came down to societal norms, conditioning. This is what I saw my dad do. This is what I saw my grandfather do. This is what I saw everybody do. And I don't want to be the guy in the generation that breaks the chain of being considered a hard worker, a guy that's ethical, a guy that is the guy that wants to be able to move the proverbial needle in his family.
Yeah.
So, and again, this is no disrespect to my parents, but my parents were amateur parents because their parents were amateur parents.
Sure.
Nobody has a professional mom or dad to say, hey, you know what? You shouldn't do that. Now, you're going to get guidance, but when you're late 20s, early 30s, at least for me, putting yourself in a position where I don't need sleep. I mean, this is the last thing that I need right now is to be able to sleep. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's
and in my market, so I'm in the luxury construction industry as well, and that business is cyclical. So to put a tactical answer to your question, Todd, was, hey, the market is great right now. I've been around during economic downturn, and I don't ever want to feel that again. So while it's good, you got to get it. And while it's good, and then you can come up for air and have time to be able to invest in your family, have time to be able to invest in your relationship with your wife and hope. And luckily for me, by the grace of God, my wife is the closest thing to a saint that I know walking on earth because she's been gracious enough to allow and afford me the ability to navigate through these paths, to understand now where I go back and have gone back and say, I'm no longer asking for permission, where it's now almost past an apology, where it's, hey, this is something that I went astray. And now equally as hard as I went astray on that, watch what I'm going to do now to be able to bring this back and right the ship, not only for me, but our family. And it goes back to that societal conditioning. What would it be like if we could teach our kids, our children, our offspring that you can be successful, but we need to understand what the definition of success is. If you want to make $1 million in your bank account, great. What are you going to do when you do it?
Right.
You hit that.
No, it's so true. It's so good. I'm sorry, Todd, but I just think about the just the repetition of the lineage, right? And we're products of our environment. Yeah. And so to want to break the mold and show your kids something different is courageous and bold and awesome.
You're swimming upstream, which is hard to do, but highly impactful. I never really thought about that, but that is so true. It's the societal conditioning that probably keeps us in that place of justifying that what I'm doing is okay because everybody else is doing it. But there is a point in time where we start to ask ourselves a question, and that is, what will happen if I don't put the brakes on right now and start to make some changes? So what do you think would have happened to Al had you not made those changes? What do you think in general happens to those people who say, I think I'm kind of aware of this. I know I probably should, make some changes, but not yet. I'm not quite there yet. I'll get there. But what happens if they don't?
100%. Well, I know what happened to me. I mean, candidly speaking, and this is this is self-serving and also a bit of egotistical, but for me, and I shared a bit earlier about weightlifting and bodybuilding is something that's always been for me. But what would happen was I wasn't getting the rest, I wasn't getting the nutrients, and I was physically and mentally stressed. So then I would go into the gym and I would recognize that, hey, I can't lift the same amount of weight that I was lifting before. I'm 35 years old. I'm not supposed to feel this way.
Right.
So candidly, it was like, whoa, that was enough of a physical, oh, I need to do something. Never did I think, well, I'm going to put my blinders on and I'm just going to go to work. Regardless of situation, I'm going to get this done. If Al Hammond tells you he's going to do something, take it to the bank.
Yeah.
And I hung my hat on that, and I still do by the grace of God. But I also say that, well, I also told my kids I was going to be the best father that I can be. I also told my wife I'm going to be the best husband I can be. And I did that before I decided to be a businessman. So in my mind, it was like, well, wait a minute, man, you're stealing from Peter to pay Paul here. And that's very much living in the or. You can be a businessman, and I'm not marginalizing it. You know, you want to make $100,000 a year, 500, whatever your number is. What happens when you get there? So now you're a businessman and you've attached your entire identity to the result. But once you get the result, what's the shady aftermath? You lack the relationships that you want to be there with you in the result. Yeah. So for me, that was my hard stop, to be able to say, no, I can't do this. And to your point, it upset some people, my clients, some of my vendor relationships, certainly some of my staff, because they had been conditioned by me for years. This is how Al Hammond shows up.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's so good. And when you flip the script, they're like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, that's not
He's
fair.
doing that. That means there's something going on with me that isn't operating well. So they had to look in the mirror, and that's hard to do. And yeah, but way to create that ripple effect in a whole new way. And I'm sure that they were only mad for a smidgen of time. They got over it, and they learned how to take care of themselves too, which ultimately helped them and their family. And so think of just how that has rippled out, not just in your family, but with your employees, now that you've shifted the way you take care of you. So that's so cool. Well, we really want to, touch on the 4-quarter operating system, because you've mastered it. You've got it going on, and people like Todd and I, we really want to master it. And I know so many people that are listening really do desire to master it, whether they're, even realizing that they're having an issue with work-life balance yet or not. But we all desire to be present and with our families, and to give 100% of ourselves in the areas that we need to. So tell us a little bit about this system.
Yeah, because you came to that point of recognition. It's one thing for all of us to know, okay, you know what? He's right. I need to make some changes. But if I don't have a system, I'm lost.
Right.
So how did you develop this, and what is it?
100%. So brief overview, we shared a little bit about vitals, quick assessment of where I'm at. And for me, it was the pillars: financially, physically, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. And I do a quick assessment of that, of where. And it's not necessarily a grade or a competition of me versus Timmy or Tommy, or even me versus me. It's an assessment of where I'm at.
For an
accountability measure. Absolutely. Secondly is vision. And this is where the system came for me, is understanding vision. And when I speak of vision, I share this think about you guys, December 31st of this year. And Todd is raising a glass, Wendy, you're raising a glass. It can be grape juice, whatever you want it to be. But you're saying, raising the glass, by the grace of God and the sweat of our brow, this is what we were able to accomplish this year. And what is this? Doesn't need to even be something tangible. Doesn't even need to be a new career or a dollar amount. It could be relationships. It could be the ability to be present without my phone. The ability to go on vacation and shut your phone off.
Wow.
Whatever that looks like. Exactly. I know that's giving a lot of people anxiety.
That's good, Al. I feel another level of this challenge happening now.
But understanding exactly where it is that you want to be, because at the end of the day, and this is where we talk about design never default. A lot of days we wake up and, all right, this is what I need to do today. I need to get this, and this done. And then the next thing you know, it's 7 o'clock and you've defaulted into your day. And by your day, you do that and do it. And now you've defaulted into your week, into your month, quarter, and year. And the next thing you know, 5 years go by, and I said, well, wait, how did I get to this point? And that's me. So understanding exactly where you want to be from a finite level, getting to that point and literally write it down. And then the third piece is the vehicle. Well, okay, I've done an assessment of where I'm at. I've done an assessment of where I want to go. So now we know your starting line, where you're at, the vitals, finish line, where you want to go. How are we going to bridge that gap? What's the impasse? That's your vehicle. So for me, that's a 4-quarter operating system. And the way I broke this down, and I've taken bits and pieces of this from just information on podcasts, reading books, things of that nature. And I remember listening and thinking, well, if I can really compartmentalize my day, I can really niche it down on each one of these sections, and I can be more present in this section and then give myself permission, so to speak, to be able to go to the next one. What happened subsequently that I didn't know was, I don't want to sit here and tell you that I never have a bad day, but I get 4 days in one, because each day I'm allowed to do 4 different things relative to my vision. So I'll share with you my Q1. The 4-quarter operating system. And again, this is me. I have some clients that if I say we start talking about 4 a.m. wake up calls, they're gonna hang up the phone. Like, it's just, dude, I'm not that guy. I got to be 10 o'clock, and whatever that looks like. For me, I break it down into 4 equal hours. Again, this could be 2 hours for one person, 8 hours for another, but it's essentially me, in, on, we. So the first quarter, strategically and intentionally, is me. For me, that's 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. Now, this works for my family life through a multitude of discussions with my wife, and I've enrolled my wife to I do this in the end, meaning I'm not doing it at the cost of, well, she's got to be able to do this, this, and this for me to be able to do that. But the logic associated with my Q1 is to fill my cup first. And I know that there's a lot of folks that'll say, based on conditioning, well, that's selfish. Well, call it whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, week, month, year, decade, if you don't, how am I going to show up in this podcast if I'm running at 20% and I'm not in a position where I've sewed into myself, whether that be my spirit, my mind, my body, my nutrients, certainly rest.
That's right.
So I break that down. 4 a.m. wake up call. I'm in the gym by 5. I'm in there for about an hour and a half. And I put some God time, literally God time, in my calendar to just give myself a half hour a day to just think and listen. And I'm not going to tell you like I get some crazy downloads every single day, but what it does is it affords me the ability to say, you know what, I feel a little something about this person, and I actually heard Jesse Itzler say one time on a call, I reach out to 3 people a day with no expectation. You guys are shaking your head. You know exactly what I'm talking about, with no expectation or result of that. So I was like, oh, that sounds great. Let me just start doing that. And then I started incorporating a little bit of that God time to say, well, you know what? How do I feel like this person is doing? Cannot tell you how many times where I've received a response back. Maybe not that. Sometimes I don't even. I mean, when I first started doing it, some of my friends were like, dude, are you okay? Is everything okay with you? But so many times folks would just reach out and say, man, I thank you for that text message, or I thank you for that call. You don't know what that means for me today. And what does that do for me?
Yeah.
Fills my cup immediately, because now I know I'm outside of my mind, outside of my own self. And now I'm serving somebody else.
You got it.
So I put myself in a position that come 8 o'clock in the morning, my cup is full, to where I've done spiritual, physical, mental, emotional work on myself for 4 hours to be able to show up. Absolutely. That's my non-negotiable still to this day. At 7:30, between 7:30 and 8, that's where I go. And I'm ready to toe the line at 8 o'clock for my business.
That's so good.
So Q1 is all about me filling my cup. We could just spend the next hour just on different ways to be able to do that. And I love the fact that you give us freedom. For you, it's 4 hours, and you're very, in a sense, regimented in terms of how much time you spend doing what. We don't have to be that way, but we do have to be committed to taking the time needed. We get to decide that, of how we're going to fill our cup and when we're going to fill our cup. So, man, that is perfect. That's the way to set you up for, I'm guessing, Q2.
And before you go there, Al, I'm sorry. I do want to ask you, do you have moments, think yes, but I'm more girly, and so when I'm in my prayer chair, so to speak, I have moments where I'm like, I'm not ready to get up. Like God is
Oh
still
yeah.
talking to me. So you talked about having a 30-minute window where you spend time with God. Do you ever have moments where you're like, no, this is too good, too rich. I'm gonna stay here and meditate longer. Okay, so you give yourself that flexibility.
Absolutely. So without getting too deep into that, I call that trades and transitions.
Mm.
So for example, if I feel that,
Mm,
absolutely I want to stay into that. And if that
awesome.
rolls into 8 o'clock, I just take the amount of time that I rolled into 8 o'clock and I make a trade in my in on the next day or the following day. So if I trade a half hour, I make sure that I'm accountable for that a half hour when I'm working in or on my business.
It's good.
Same thing, same thing for a client that'll say, "Hey, man, how do I shut off?" And we can chat about that when we get from Q3 to Q4 a little bit. That's a transition on how to, I've got the proverbial armor on of business out. I'm out in the business world, but I don't want to show up to my kids the same way that I'm showing up at a negotiation table or something of that nature. And I want to
It's good.
segue back to Q2.
Yeah.
For my business, Q2 is when I work in my business.
Mm-hmm.
So from 8A to 12P, this is when all you high performance doers get up, give yourself permission to do. And again, it could be 2 hours, could be 8 hours, could be 4 hours. But I say this confidently, certainly not braggadociously. I know what I do in those 4 hours are sometimes exponentially greater than most do in 40 hours because I'm not on Instagram, I'm not on Facebook, I'm not fielding phone calls, I'm not doing things that are otherwise going to distract me from moving the needle of my business.
It's good.
And the way I look at that is this is a way that I can create additional avenues of revenue today. How do I put food on the table today? Whether that's business, sales, absolutely. That's where I go back to that tunnel vision. I mean, I don't want to sit here and tell you, Wendy, that, oh, no, I don't do that anymore. I'm not result oriented. Yeah, well, because the results are what help you get to where you want to be. But I also have time for the relationships. So this is the time where, for me, if it's in my coaching business, these are compensated coaching calls. If this is a deal where job site visits, vendor visits, subcontractor client visits, things of that nature. And I do that till 12 o'clock. And then at 12 o'clock is when I transition to on my business. Now, for me, the difference between in and on, one of them is going to move the needle today. Today could be this week. Sometimes a sales cycle is a little bit longer than a day and a week, certainly in my realm. On my business, I have no expectation of garnering a result. So from Q3, it's 12P to 4P. This is when I work on my business and I sow into the relationships. This is lunch meetings. This is meetings again with vendor relationships, potential clients, non-compensated coaching calls on something that may be, hey, Al, can I get 20 minutes of your time to be able to discuss something like this? Absolutely. I want to be a yes man, but I don't want to be a yes man because at the extent of that, that's going to put me in a position where, all right, yeah, I can take this call, but now I'm reactively throughout the day. And I can take this call between the hours of 12 to 4. And if it doesn't work for your schedule today, hey, guess what? I got 4 other days this week that I know that I can protect to do that.
So good. So good.
The other piece to that, guys, the biggest thing for me, emails. Emails,
Hello, yes.
phone call responses, text messages, and I'll share with you that this was a major trigger for me. And I felt bad about feeling bad, right? Because the more emails you get, your business is moving. So why would I not want to have emails? But at the same point in time, I didn't have a system or a structure. And I certainly didn't have the intentionality behind any system and structure to be able to know when am I going to do my emails. So I would go through all my workday, get through everything else. And then here I go, 72 emails. And if I don't do them today, guess what's going to happen tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the time where I have deliberately put time in, and I get an email. I'm not going to tell you I don't get emails right now, but 2 things happen. Number one, I stopped becoming the slave to my business because I know Monday through Friday, regardless of situation or circumstance, I'm going to have a 4-hour window when I can tackle nothing but emails, text messages, and return phone calls. The second thing happened, I subsequently reconditioned my vendors, my subcontractors, and my clients as to when they can get a hold of me.
That's good.
Now, I'm not going to tell you no one reaches out to me only between the hours of 12 and 4. But those that are astute and self and situationally aware know, hey, If I send Al an email at 12:30, he's going to kick me an email back. If you want to get a hold of Al Hammond real time, that's probably the time that you should reach out. And that's the thing that I do. And it gives me permission. And I'll take a breath and come up for air here before we get into Q4, which is my why. The entire reason on why my day, my weeks, my month, my year, my vision is set up.
So I would imagine for you, you probably do not have email notifications coming across your phone. Is that correct?
Very good question. So I'm also not a fan of notifications, so if I get 78 read on my mail, it's just an OCD trigger for me. So two things that I do is I remove the email notifications. Three things that I do. Second of all is I don't get spam mail. I don't allow spam mail to come in to where I got to sort through this. Do I need to be able to do this? As a matter of fact, if I get on a distribution list that someone puts me on without my permission, I'm unsubscribing like that. It's no disrespect to them, but I'm protecting my space. They didn't ask permission to be able to throw that on there.
That's good.
The third thing that I do is I created a follow-up folder. It's nothing fancy. It literally says follow up. So at any point in time that I get an email outside of the hours of 12 to 4, I give it 2 seconds. I'm not reading it. All I'm doing is this important or not? And if it's important, I flag it. If it's not, I don't. And it goes in my follow-up folder. And then between 12 and 4, the very first ones that I start with, I go through and I look at all the ones that are flagged. Those are typically the ones that are time sensitive or the ones that require my attention to get back. And if I don't get through all of them or I don't get through all of my emails, no big deal. Because I know I got a system, a structure, and the commitment to back that to be able to hit it again tomorrow.
Oh, I need this.
Oh,
I need this
man,
really
this
bad.
is so good. Wow. But what's funny is that it's just a system. There's nothing complicated about it.
Absolutely.
And as if you've been listening to Al's description
it's a system,
of
but
each
it's
quarter,
Al coaching too. The system. He coaches people through this.
Absolutely, yes, 100%. But I'm thinking, as I'm listening to you explain the Q system, it has nothing to do with feelings. It's like, do I feel like answering this email now? Do I feel like it's just it's a decision that you've made,
no matter who sent the email,
and to commit to the system all 3 quarters. Let's talk about quarter 4 because
that's so good.
That's, you said, is what really produces your why.
That's my why, 100%. So this is, if we go back to me, Q1, in Q2, on Q3, Q4 is we. That's my family time. Non-negotiable. If you send me an email, text message, or phone call at 4:03 and say, hey, Al, I have a duffel bag full of cash for $3 million and I want to buy this house. You don't even need to respond a full letter yes. Just put why in the email and we'll know this deal is done. You're wasting your time sending me that because you can't buy my time as it pertains to my family. Now, that is something that I have switched to be able to do. And here's the deal. I go equally as hard and I am equally as present, omnipresent in that 4th quarter as all of us doers want to be come Monday morning at 8 o'clock. And then what happens is now my kids get to know I don't have to come in the door read dad's face and say, what kind of mood is dad in? Is dad going to be in a mood where he can be approached? Or you know what? I'm not going to be able to go after dad today because he's got stuff. He's on the phone. He's insert here. And this is the time where I sow into my kids. I'll go to their practices. I don't know anything about dance, but I want my daughter to know. I know that I want to be there and I want her to know that I'm there. Same thing with my son.
Wonderful.
Present for dinner, present for any kind of time that I want with my wife, whether we're watching TV, we're taking a walk, and somebody would say, yeah, you know what? I would love to be able to take a walk with my wife. I don't have the time. You have the same 24 hours in your day as you and me. Are you prioritizing it or not? And to your point, it just comes down to systemizing to where I don't have to feel bad that I didn't get these emails, or I don't have to feel bad that I didn't do that because I know I have a system that I'm subscribed to that I'm going to be able to do that tomorrow. And then what happens is eventually over time, your children, your wife, the relationships that you sow into start to bank on that. They start to say, nope, dad's not going to compromise that. And then they start to enroll you in their lives. Hey, dad, you want to go with this? Hey, dad, I got practice. Absolutely, I want to be able to do that. Whereas before, it's always the mom conversation because dad's got to work. What am I showing my kids? Going back to that conditioning and that expectation. No disrespect to my dad. My dad showed me how to work hard, but he didn't show me how to work hard and be available when I needed him to be available. And that's where we talk about living in the and. How can I be the best husband I can be, and the best father I can be, and the best man of God I can be? I've got to segment, and I've got to be able to niche down every single one and then make sure that I'm present in that.
That's so beautiful, Al. I immediately go to the person listening that might be thinking, Al, that's great for you. Way to go, buddy. But for me, it's too late. Like I feel, or they feel like it's too late because maybe their kids have grown and they've missed those opportunities and their mind is thinking differently. What would you say to that person that is
That's
an
a victim
overachiever
statement.
and wants to change?
That's a victim statement.
That's 100% victim statement.
go.
You're making an
Good.
excuse because whether you don't want to do the work or you don't see the vision.
Good.
So go
Yes.
back and keep in mind, I don't want to tell you guys that I wake up every single day, Wendy, and I'm like happy to go lucky and ready to wake up and jump out of bed at 4:00 in the morning. Today, case in point. Hand to God, case in point. Waking up today and I knew I had an hour climb, cardio climb of a 15 incline, and it's not my favorite. So at 4:03, by 4:17, I was still in bed. 4:17 for me, that's like, what are you doing, dude? But I say that to say, I recognized through a vitals assessment, are you negotiating your goals? And are you negotiating your goals from a position of weakness because you're tired? Okay, let's make an adjustment, not an excuse here. You can go to the gym and maybe we switch this workout till Friday because I know Thursday is going to be a high carb day for me, which allows and affords me to have more energy on. Again, it's a system to be able to do that. And again, and immediately once I start having not the negative self-talk, oh, you can't do this, or this guy's going to be better than you, or whatever it is that used to motivate me candidly. No, it's my why and where I want to be on my own glass when I'm raising on December 31st, by the grace of God and the sweat of my brow, is non-negotiable. It doesn't matter how I feel right now because that is how I want to feel when I get there. And if I don't hit that, we got the whole system derails, and I don't know what to tell you at that point.
That's so good. And you've got the vision. I mean, there's so many people that's what they're missing is the vision.
100%.
Yeah.
That's it.
And they're missing the vehicle as well. And that's where the 4-quarter system comes in. I love this. So, Al, some people are going to look at this, listen to this, I should say, and say, okay, I need this. I'm going to get going on it. And maybe you'll listen to it again. I've got all kinds of notes. I seldom take notes.
Yeah, it's a full
okay, I
page
got to
over
have
here.
this. So my next question is, and we're going to let you go here in just a moment, is when is the book coming out and the online course? Because we all need this.
Yes.
Now, I know we could hire you because you work with tons of executives who, are high achievers, and you really drill down with them. You do a phenomenal job in that. But is there any plans in the works yet? Because I'm going to challenge you. If not, get that book out, get that online course going.
Yes, sir. You took the words out of my mouth. So a book is something that I'm actually in active discussions with my own personal coaches and my own personal mentors to be able to do that. And the second piece is I want to be, it's on my heart to be able to make sure that no father feels how I felt. No son or daughter or wife feels how I felt or how I'm sure that they felt. But at the same point in time, I can't out of the left hand say, hey, let's do this and scale it. But on the right hand, compromise any of the systems that I'm speaking to. I mean, I eat my own cooking, so to speak. Excuse me. So I say that to say
healthy cookie. Yes.
Absolutely. So I'm in the process actually as we speak of creating a 3-month offer to where we can scale this. It's a low price ticket offer to where you'll have access to me, have access to folks that have actually gone through this, that have trained with me for north of 6 months to a year.
Awesome.
So now they can implement into there, and we can bring it to someone where they don't feel like, oh, I need to invest thousands and thousands of dollars and hours and time to be able to do something. No, this is something that we can give you with a syllabus, actual tactable, practical steps to be able to go from vitals, vision, and vehicles.
Cool. And so how will someone be able to get a hold of that and to learn more about this and about you?
Yeah. So how do we follow you? How do we stay in touch? What's the
Absolutely.
easiest way?
I would say the biggest piece is social media. Instagram is probably going to be the biggest driver. And I'm sure you guys can put it in the show notes as to the Instagram handle. I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn and things of that nature. But Yeah, that's really on my heart. And one big thing before we land the plane here that I want to share, you spoke to it a couple different times, Wendy, is the rest component. So that's one thing that I want to make sure that I complete this cycle. So it is a 4-quarter operating system, but I didn't mention the 5th quarter. So the 5th quarter, or overtime, if you will, is, well, what do you do after 8 o'clock? Well, you told me you go from 4P to 8P, and that's your family time. Well, then what do you do after that? Like an old man, it takes me well, I shouldn't say like an old man, but I'm in bed about 8:15. It takes me about 45 minutes to an hour for me to downshift, get myself in the position where I'm getting deep REM needed sleep. Right. And that's my 5th quarter, from 8P to 4 a.m. the next morning.
That's so good.
Love
8:15. Okay, we're not there yet.
No, I think we've bumped it up almost to like 9:30.
Yeah,
we're getting there. Baby steps, but Al, cannot tell you how valuable the information is that you've shared. More so, just your life, because you're living proof that while not easy, it can be implemented, and it just takes practice after you make a decision that you need this, and then you make that commitment. Because people are going to take a run at this, and then they're going to stumble all over the place. They're going to try. Well, I tried this for a week; it's not working, or whatever. And I just want you to encourage them, because when they do fall down, help them get back up and stick with the system, because the results of this are going to be so impactful.
Absolutely, that's a fantastic point. And I am continuously sharpening the saw, so to speak, on my own systems. I'm finding areas of opportunity of growth. And for those that say, "Hey, man, that's great for you, dude, but I'm not getting up at 4 o'clock, and I'm sure as heck not going to bed at 8 o'clock." Get up at 6. Get up at 10. Go to bed at 10. For some of those personality-driven characteristics that say, you know what, the nighttime is more favorable for me. Systemize it to where you're in a position to where you can maximize what's more favorable for you. And I would encourage you to, it's not supposed to be easy, but we're not looking for easy. We're looking for possible. And this is possible time and time and time again. Keep vision in your mindset. And remember, by the grace of God and the sweat of your brow.
That's so good.
You're a good coach, man.
And it gets easier. May not be easy, but it gets easier. So thank you so much for being just an excellent example, sharing your heart with us, sharing your system with us. And we will definitely put in the show notes where people can find you and get a hold of you and tap into this awesome system. And we cannot wait to read your book when it comes out.
Let's go.
You guys will be among the first to get it. I appreciate you, my friends, and I appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Bless you, friend.
All right, take care.
Bless you both. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Wow, was that not fun?
I want to go away now and read my notes and start putting into practice. Come on.
This is the 30-day challenge, part of it. This is like a lifetime challenge maybe, but no, this is part of the 30-day challenge of how to really make it work for you, to put that work-life balance into practice. And what does that look like for your life? For me, oh my goodness, it's putting away the phone at a certain hour, getting up. Well, I mean, we're pretty good at getting up at the same time, but going to bed at that same time every night. You know, we kind of have an hour that we're like, between 9 and 10.
So you and I are implementing components,
but not the whole thing.
We're not doing it necessarily in a systemized way,
right?
Which I think
Al's got it.
Is so important to, in a sense, just get these segments down.
Yeah.
And don't violate it. Like for me, while I think I've cut way back on email, and I think I only address it at certain times, the reality is I end up going to email throughout the day.
Yeah, I do
or
too.
In your case, in the night too.
In the night too? No, I don't.
But this is why we put this challenge out here. And if you want to go back to the beginning, just listen to the previous episode, episode number 67.
Yes.
Because we talk about these stuck points. We give you a couple of the suggestions. Actually, Al mentioned these.
Yes,
one is like you pick a start time and you pick a stop time. And Wendy and I have just begun doing that, and it is really tough, but it's possible.
It is possible.
And we're committed. We're going to keep you guys up to date.
Yeah, we will.
On how we're doing, and we want to know how you're doing in this.
Yes. So comment on YouTube or wherever you find this, on social media. Just comment. Let's dialogue about it, because I know Al will probably tap into between his, in his window of time that he taps into social media. But I think it'll be fun just to have this conversation, because it's one that maybe you haven't even taken a look at. Maybe you're like, no, I'm good. But then if you really look at yourself, you're like, no, wait, I am tired and wired, and I could be better about disciplining the hours in which I work, or putting my phone away, or not checking emails all throughout the day. And let's just up the level in how we're operating. So
but challenge yourself to do this challenge. Okay,
challenge yourself to do the challenge.
I'm
That's
serious.
good.
I mean, really, because this is so key. Just do it. All right, just start implementing.
And by the way,
start reporting your results
on this challenge, we don't have like a PDF for you to print out. We don't have like a little ebook kind of thing yet. But what I wanted to say is just print out, or if you have a calendar, a 30-day, calendar that you can say, okay, week 1, I am going to focus just on this week.
Yeah.
Let's just take 1 week and do work-life balance. How is it looking for the week? And lay it out. Have that vision. Check your vitals every day. How's it looking for you? What's that vision look like? Or have that me, in, on, we, fourth quarter kind of components where, okay, I'm spending this time on me, and there's God, and then in the business, on the business, and then we as family. Yeah. How's that looking for you?
So I'm going to I literally am. I'm going to print out a 30-day calendar.
Yeah.
And on week 1, I'm going to put in there, work on demand, work-life balance. And then I'm just going to score myself between 1 to 10 on how well I did, because I got to have some sort of measurement.
But maybe I should score you.
Oh,
because if you're scoring yourself, I don't know.
No, that's not a bad idea at all. But maybe you want to do something similar. But if you don't record this, you're not going to know whether or not you're making any progress. And we really, truly want you to make some progress in this area, because so many other things are hinging on whether or not you're going to be successful at balancing out your work life.
Yes, and you deserve it. You really, really do. Yeah. And your health matters, your family matters, and God wants you to operate at your maximum level. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Your Biggest Breakthrough. And we will put all the information in the show notes, so check that out there as well, and share with others. Yeah. All right. God bless.
Blessings. So glad you could join us today, and you'll find a new episode every Tuesday on your favorite podcast platform.
And if you've been encouraged by listening or viewing, would you just take a moment and give us a 5-star rating and a quick review? That'd be so awesome.
Yeah, and also please share this with your friends and loved ones.
If you have comments or questions, or if you're looking for an advertising opportunity, please get in touch with us at yourbiggestbreakthrough.com.
Or if you'd like to optimize your health and wellness, you can work directly with Wendy. Go to wendypet.com.
Or if you're a guy and you're interested in mentoring and coaching, go to toddisburner.com. We look forward to having you join us on our next episode of Your Biggest Breakthrough.